a little bit differently. You probably know all that. Although in other ways I'm saying things that other Democratic candidates are saying. And that is why I am articulating a conversation that I believe and that we all can recognize goes deeper than the conversation that is promulgated by the conventional political establishment. The conventional political establishment in this country is too narrow a container for the energies which must emerge at this time. These energies are not just American, they represent a global impulse towards an evolutionary alternative to the direction that the human race is taking at this time.
Exactly.
Is that I'm naive, you see. The idea that I believe love rather than market forces disconnected from all moral and ethical considerations should actually be the operating principle for human civilization. Some would say I'm naive to say that. Let me tell you what I say. They're naive to think we will survive on this planet for another 100 years if we do not make that. I'll tell you how the president will be defeated. He will be defeated on the basis of a moral argument. And right now, the only argument being waged against him on the level of morality is almost high school. What you're doing is really immoral. That's what the president is doing is really immoral. It's got to be bigger than that. We have to present a moral alternative. We have to present a moral politics. And even though too many of the Republican politics are immoral, too many Democratic politics are amoral. We need more than amoral. We need immoral politics. We have been trained, see. We've trained to expect too little. We've been trained to question too little. We've been trained to complain too little. And that will be the death of America. A rambunctious spirit. That is the characterological DNA of this country. That country was founded out of a rebellious and rambunctious message given to the aristocratic systems that had dominated Europe for centuries. A system in which a very few people were deemed entitled. A king and the king or queen's few rich friends remind you of something? That system was the idea that a few people were entitled to land, a few people were entitled to education, a few people were entitled to the opportunities for wealth creation, and nobody else was. We repudiated that nonsense in 1776, and it is time to repudiate it again. Is that our country has regressed. That's all that's happened. That's why Franklin Roosevelt talked about how the forces he was fighting were economic royalists. It's just an aristocratic paradigm. You can talk about it in terms of oligarchy, corporatocracy, but it's all the same paradigmatic issue. It's an archetype of a few people have the power or the power belongs to the people. It's one or the other. And that's why Louis Brandeis, the late Supreme Court Justice, said you can have large amounts of money concentrated in the hands of a few, or you can have democracy. You cannot have both. That's right. So let me tell you what we need to do, as I see it. We need a moral politics. The House of Moral Politics has 4 pillars. Number 1, a moral economics. And in that, my economic ideas are very similar to the Bernie Sanders, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world. We need to repeal the 2017 $2 trillion tax cut. We need to put back in the middle class tax cut. We need to stop these ridiculous subsidies. We pay $26 billion in subsidies to the oil and gas industry. We pay 10 times more to that than we pay to education. Martin Luther King used to say if they give it to rich people, they call it a subsidy. If they give it to poor people, they call it a handout. We need to stop this ridiculous way that our own lawmakers have negotiated against us in making themselves unable to negotiate for lower drug prices with big pharmaceutical companies. The chokehold of big pharma, the chokehold of health insurance companies, the chokehold of the gun manufacturers, the chokehold of oil and gas, the chokehold of agribusiness, the chokehold of food companies, the chokehold of chemical companies, the chokehold of defense contractors and the nuclear industry. This will not stop until we say enough is enough. Hold education from a child simply because we base our educational funding on property taxes. How immoral is that? And it leads us to withhold education from children for no other reason than that they come from less advantaged neighborhoods. That is a passive form of oppression. want a U.S. Department of Children and Youth. It's not enough. You hear a lot of politicians talk about how we need more money for education, which we certainly do. We need more money for teachers. We need to get rid of these standardized high-stakes testing, all of that. But it's more than that. It's more than when they say we need universal preschool. Ladies and gentlemen, millions of American children are traumatized before they even get to preschool. We have a relatively high rate of maternal health, maternal mortality. We have a relatively high rate of infant mortality. So I want a whole holistic coordination, not only having to do with education, also having to do with early childhood understanding of the brain, of psychology, and so forth. And if you elect me president, there's going to be a big change there. We're going to set this country up to win by taking care of the people who will be adults 10 years, 15 years later. I have great respect for the military. My father fought in World War II. I don't think any of us don't think we need to have a strong military. Our military, though, should be like a surgeon. If you have to have surgery, you need to have the best. But you avoid surgery if at all possible. Now, for those of you too young to remember, let me give you just a little bit of American history here. There was a man named Dwight Eisenhower. He was the supreme Allied commander in World War II. He certainly understood the military and what its needs are. He then came back to the United States and served as a Republican president from 1952 to 1960. When he gave his farewell address, it was he who coined the phrase military-industrial complex. Because before World War II, the United States didn't have a standing army. I don't think any of us fail to recognize we need a standing army. But Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex because once that started to happen, there was a lot of money to be made. I want the U.S. military to have every cent that it needs in order to address our legitimate security concerns. The issue is not about military policy. The issue is about political policy by which short-term profits for defense contractors are served that have absolutely very little to do with our national security. Given that with national security, just like with health of the body, you can't just take medicine, you have to cultivate your health. And with war and peace, the same is true. Sickness is the absence of health. Health isn't the absence of sickness. And war is the absence of peace. Peace isn't the absence of war. We can't just spend all of our resources on endlessly preparing for war. Even Donald Rumsfeld said, we must wage peace. But if we wage peace, let's talk about the real facts of the matter here. Our military budget is $750 billion a year. Our State Department budget is $40 billion. State Department is mediation, diplomacy, and development. Within the State Department, there are two main peace-building factors. One, the USAID, which is humanitarian aid, $17 billion. And peace-building agencies. The peace-building agencies get, in total, less than $1 billion. Peace-building efforts, peace-building activities take just as much sophistication as do military activities. And let me tell you the four factors, none of these will surprise anyone, which statistically mean, when present, there will be greater incidence of peace and a diminished incidence of violence. Number one, greater economic opportunities for women. Number two, reduced violence against women. Number three, expanded educational opportunities for children. And number four, amelioration of unnecessary human suffering wherever possible. That is why, for me, if you make me president, all domestic and international policy will be built around the core that in order for us to have peace and prosperity in this country, on this planet, we will pass policies which have as their bottom line the tendency to help people thrive.
I'd like to end this, and you can also end it, but before you end it, I'd like us all to take a second. You are a spiritualist, correct?
That word technically means you make the table bump up and down. Spiritual seeker, yeah.
You're a spiritual seeker, so I think we want to give her a San Francisco chant. How do we feel, right? Let's take the energy in this room and let's pick it up a notch, right? We have residents upstairs. We want them to be chanting with us. Let's start quiet and let's get loud, okay? Marianne. 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 feel.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I hope you will join me.
We got questions.
Do what you can. Do what you can. Talk to your friends. We need money. We need buzz. We need you. Thank you.
We got
very
questions.
much.